We are now being joined by Dhruva Jayashankar, Executive Director, ORF America. Sir, welcome to First Post.
Thank you for having me.
Your response to India's strike?
Well, I don't know if I have a response. I think there was some expectation, particularly given the events of the past 2 weeks, both the terrorist attacks themselves, as well as Pakistan's policy afterwards of continuing to deny involvement, and as India has said, not being cooperative in cracking down on terrorist activity on its soil, that there would be some kind of Indian kinetic strikes, either military strikes or covert operations. I think that was very high expectation. That particularly given what happened in 2019 after the Pulwama terrorist attack, and in 2016 after the Uri terrorist attack. And so I think what we saw in the past few hours overnight in India and Pakistan was something that many saw coming, although obviously the exact nature of it was not known until after the operation was concluded and India made the announcement about the operation.
India's strike, while sending a firm message to Pakistan, is a responsible one. And attacks were only on terror targets. What is your view to that?
I mean, that is what India has said. India is obviously keen on sending a strong message that the maintenance of a terrorist infrastructure, as Pakistan has done now for a very long time, as a very deliberate policy of for attacking India using terrorist proxies, that is not acceptable. And obviously, India wants to compel Pakistan to take action against those terrorists, to dismantle their terrorist infrastructure. Pakistan has a long and rather well-documented history going back many decades of allowing its soil to be used for financing. The Pakistan Army and the ISI are very complicit in the equipping and training of terrorist proxies. And so India has obviously been attempting using a number of levers to try and compel Pakistan to not do that. So obviously some kind of kinetic strike is part of that Indian policy of trying to change that. And this has been, again, India's position, particularly since 2016. Now, obviously, this is going to be the other concern is that there is a escalatory potential, of course. Pakistan and India are both two well-equipped large militaries. Both are in possession of nuclear weapons. And so India has very deliberately adopted an approach, and they made that very clear in the announcement, the Indian government, that it would target non-military facilities and be, in that sense, quite restrained in its approach. Now, it remains to be seen what Pakistan's response is going to be. We've seen some claims made in the past few hours. There was particularly intense firing on the line of control, artillery firing. Some reports now of further Indian civilian casualties. So we'll have to see again what the Pakistani response is. But in the past, Pakistan has tried to use the fear of escalation between India and Pakistan to try and invite third-party mediation in Kashmir, something that India has been very clear about rejecting, whereas India has tried to also show that, again, terrorist attacks such as the one in the last 2 weeks will be met with a firm response.
India informed its allies, including the US, right after the attack, once again behaving responsibly. What is your reaction to that?
So again, early reports suggest that India has, after the attack, I mean, in the past few weeks, by the way, I should say, India has laid the groundwork, has spoken to a number of leaders of a number of countries in bilateral conversations, including most of the members of the UN Security Council, both permanent and non-permanent members, in an attempt to get very firm support and a very clear message against standing against terrorism in all its forms. Now, since the attack, there have been some early reports again that India has spoken to US, I believe, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval has spoken to US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Rubio, by the way, also spoke to the Pakistan NSA as well. And then India has also reached out to others, Russia, reported to be Russia, UK, Saudi Arabia, UAE, amongst others. And I think just kept them abreast of what these developments are. Now, India is obviously hoping that they can use that diplomatic pressure to weigh in against Pakistan and any scope of retaliation and escalation by Pakistan.
President Trump has already reacted. What will be America's response going forward? And is there a fear that Pakistan will escalate tensions?
I mean, that last part, that is really up to Pakistan, right? And it depends how it is seen, the extent of damage. We'll find out soon in the next few hours. Quite perhaps there's a briefing to be expected very soon by the Indian military. So we should have further detail on the extent of the damage as well. But on the US response, I think one thing that has changed, and the shift occurred previously, I would say it started after 2008, after 26/11 terrorist attacks in Mumbai. But particularly since 2016, we've had two major incidents where the US has not condemned not condemned India for retaliating against terrorist attacks. I think there is now a growing view, not just in the US, but including in places like Saudi Arabia and elsewhere, that if such an attack took place against them, they would very likely be the kind of response that we've seen by India. So I think there is a greater degree of understanding there. Again, Trump spoke briefly about it. He was just getting the news as he was asked about it in a media interaction. He didn't have all the details yet, but it's quite clear from his remarks that he did not condemn India, but there was just a broad sense that whatever happens, there should be dealt with responsibly on both sides.
And finally, what's your view on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's relentless and strong fight against terrorism?
I mean, I think that a few things have changed, particularly since Prime Minister Modi has assumed power in 2014. I think there is just a clarity that terrorism in all its forms is unacceptable. So I think very strong language. We've seen that reflected not just by the Prime Minister and by the government generally, but also India taking it to international fora, not just the UN, but other areas as well. And that has been accompanied by attempts at trying to shut down ways for terrorist organizations to operate, giving them less safe space, cracking down on terror financing, and using diplomatic pressure, particularly such as through the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF.
And that was Dhruva Jaishankar, Executive Director, ORF America. So thank you for speaking to Firstpost.
Thank you.